Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a terrifying lineup of encounters to share with you. Before we get into that, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. These links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? Alright guys, really quick before I get into the upload. The Jimtown Road case has plagued me for 5 months now. I have done countless uploads since April 5th to the other night. I have had a subscriber come on and share the little bit of knowledge that he knew. Where he talked to a homeless gentleman down in that way. I've reached out twice to the sheriff's department, the paramedics, and the fire department of Cott County twice with my uncle, who is an undersheriff up here where I live. And we have hit a brick wall twice. Once was today even. I'm only bringing this up because there are different platforms and people who are talking on different platforms, whether it be Reddit, YouTube, whatever have you, that are saying untruths about this case, making things up to up their credibility, up their whatever it is. And it bothers me because it's not hard to pick up a phone and call and hit a brick wall. It's easy to make a story up and say, hey, yeah, I did this and this and that. But these two people, they died and they were attacked brutally. In my eyes, deserve better than a fucking lie. And for those people who are making uploads or making Reddit posts about this case and lying, shame on you. It's very easy to tell the truth. Just shame on you. Now, we'll just get into the encounters after that. Today's first part of the upload. When she was younger, my wife had a therapist she used to see regularly. He was formerly an MD in the Navy. He was also an officiant and ended up marrying me and her years later. Anyway, he told her and I of a time he encountered what he described as a dogman. This was the first time I had ever heard of them, and what got me interested in cryptozoology. I don't have all the specifics on where exactly it occurred, but it was a heavily wooded area somewhere in north or middle Georgia. He and his wife had gone to a 2-story cabin far out in the woods to vacation for a couple of days. They were far from the nearest town, and there were no other buildings nearby. So what he told us is that he and his wife awoke from sleep that night, feeling an intense dread. They made their way down the stairs to the first level, and when they looked out the window, they saw a creature staring back in at them that appeared to be a bipedal canine. I know that they weren't harmed, but they were definitely spooked and felt that intense dread. I wish I had more details, but that is as much as I know. Northern and middle Georgia is very heavily wooded, and there are a lot of national and state parks. The terrain is mountainous and hilly, so it's not ideal for farming. And there aren't many major cities for some reason, so it's very easy to find large stretches of uninterrupted forest. I've heard many other encounters from Georgia, one in major swamps. I've also heard of an encounter that happened in Dayton, Tennessee, just north of me. Today's second part of the upload. I saw a thing in or near the woods on 3 separate occasions now. Each time I saw this thing, it was in a different state along the east coast of America, and each time the sighting was fleeting. I'm now in my 30s, and the sightings have several years between them. The first time I saw it was in high school, and this was most definitely the time that I got the longest look at it. The second time I only caught a glimpse, and I'm pretty sure, but not entirely sure, it was the same one. The third time I got a clear look at it from a distance, but it caught me off guard that I stumbled as I was taking a step and lost sight of it. I've been calling this thing a thing because I have no idea, quite honestly, what it is. It was not a Sasquatch, a wild man, a rake, a lizard person, or any other creature that I have found through my incredibly frustrating recent internet searches. Maybe a shapeshifter of some kind, because the first time I saw it, the thing changed its form for sure. Yeah, I said it changed its form. You can go ahead and leave now if you'd like. If you are someone like me that rely on science for validation, you try to keep an open mind, but you also tend to explain away people's paranormal encounters for any number of different reasons. Also, I would have to expect that if I ever ended up seeing something otherworldly, it might be something that someone else had seen before, right? I might see something I recognize from a television or movie, and I might say, hey, look up there, that's a UFO, holy shit, a ghost, and goddamn, it's a Bigfoot, kill it. This thing, though, this fucking thing, it was so unreal and so deranged looking, I'm at a loss. This is the first time I have put it out there for anyone, and if it weren't for this last encounter, I would have forgotten about the first 2. I've never mentioned this to anyone because of how ridiculous it sounds. The fact that I have no proof and the fact that I am a known fuckabout. I'm pretty much exactly the person you would think may make something like this up. At this point, though, I only want to get this off my chest to hopefully find out if anyone else has seen this thing. Before I began to tell you what happened, I would like to make it clear that I swear to you, what you hear is the truth about what I saw, and the best I can remember. If you don't believe it, whatever, I get that. This is the reason why I'm sharing this. And it is the reason that I never told anyone. I might have to see in my daily life. I'm sure that I would think I'm crazy or desperate for attention because what I saw was downright absurd. Well, now that I've thoroughly destroyed any credibility that I once had, I will attempt to explain the details about what I saw as bluntly as possible with as vivid of a recollection as I can have of the events. The first sighting was in southern New Hampshire, 2000-2001 summer. I don't remember exactly when, well after midnight. I'm going to take some time to explain this first encounter in as much detail as I can recall, even though it happened so fast, literally lasting maybe a total of 10 seconds. It is still the longest amount of time that I have spent truly looking at this thing. I was walking to a friend's house from an apartment complex I lived in late at night. To get to one place to the other quickly, you had to cut through a small patch of forest, roughly 100 yards. That was technically someone else's property. A couple of times before, we had someone shine a light on us, and once he fired a shot in the air to try to scare us, in the attempt to get us to stop cutting through. It never did stop us. It did, however, teach me to be stealthier when cutting through. And so on this night, I was creeping very quietly through the trees as I went. The forest was in a valley between my apartment complex, some houses, and the neighborhood where my friend lived. The valley dipped down in the middle with a steep incline surrounding it, and so at first, I had to go down into the valley and then to the end. I would walk up out the valley, exiting the tree line right onto the street where his house was. Once exiting the tree line, one would be standing on the side of the street with the end of the road about a half a mile to your right and the entrance to the neighborhood about the same distance to the left. The houses were spaced apart decently, so the night was very dark except for the area around the houses and a couple of light circles under the orange streetlights, of which there were very few for the amount of space. I got through the valley with no problem at this time, and I got up some speed to go up the hill in front of the forest and ended up 5 feet from the edge of the street. At that exact moment, I came out of the tree line and onto the edge of the road. Something caught my eye to the left when I emerged from the woods. It stumbled awkwardly out of the dark woods and into the view right at the edge of the circle of orange light radiating down from one of the streetlights. At first, and just for a brief moment, it looked like a shadow. However, I heard a sound coming from the dead leaves beneath its feet, and I quickly realized that this was not a shadow. Its body shape was like that of a starving child, maybe 3 feet tall. You might see in a third world country, but its legs and arms were so thin that there appeared to be no way it could support the creature's body weight. It was dark, but from what I can remember, at the ends of its frail-looking limbs were just nubs, no hands, no feet that I saw. Its movement was the creepiest part, honestly, and they were the first thing that threw me off. I can't even really explain how absurd and unnatural its movements were, or how it was standing on those tiny legs. It moved forward from the trees and toward the street, extremely awkwardly, with a couple of steps that I saw it take. It was almost as if it was not supposed to be walking around like that, but it had somehow figured out the way to do so regardless. The thing was roughly 2 or 3 feet tall, with an enlarged, light bulb-shaped head and a little belly in spite of how thin the rest of its frame was. In addition to its shape and motion, the thing seemed unreal, mostly because it didn't seem to reflect any light at all when it stepped into the light of the street lamp. It appeared to have no three-dimensional form at all, with its body almost blending right into the shadow, and I could only really tell that it had solid form by the way it moved and navigated the environment around it. I froze in place instantly when I saw it, with my brain unable to even process what I was seeing. In a couple of steps, it exited the trees, stumbled across the patch of grass to the street, and then sort of fumbled down forward toward the sewer drain on the side of the road. I'm not sure what I did, if anything, but as soon as it hit the curb, it rose back up and looked at me. I couldn't see its face or anything at all. Just this bizarre black shape moving, so unbelievably awkward. I really can't stress this enough. Its movements were ridiculously uncoordinated. What happened next is what sent me fleeing into the woods with all the cowardness that has kept me alive to this day. Upon seeing me, this malformed shadow childlike thing did a quick twist turn toward me, dropping down to all fours and becoming much more animal-like shape when it did. I again have no idea how to describe the motion, as it was so unnatural, but when its turn was complete, the thing had become something I can only describe as a shadow dog/cat/bear. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't describe it any other way. It stood on fours like a predatory animal, but I couldn't make out any definition on it with the way it didn't catch any light that it was standing directly below. This thing, it didn't just go from being human-like to being a human on all fours. I mean, it genuinely became something else as far as I can tell. I debated leaving this next part out because it just slices into the credibility of the events even further, but it happened, so here goes. As soon as the creature had hit all fours and was no longer humanoid, its eyes flashed yellow at me, and it let out this loud shriek. Not a growl, not a bark or a snarl, not an animal-like roar or even a hissing, but a legitimate shriek that sounded like neither a person nor an animal. The sound started quiet and then rose quickly, almost as if it was winding up or under pressure, and just painfully being forced out of this creature's mouth in great anguish. Its scream had a certain harshness to it, as if it may have had something seriously wrong with its vocal cords, or it had just smoked a million cigarettes consecutively. I remember that the thing had a weird, almost scared vulnerability to the sound it made, which contrasted the harshness in the tone as well as the defensive stance this creature took. All of this took place in a few seconds, maybe 10 at the most, from the time the thing exited the tree line to the time it turned, postured, shrieked, and sent me running without a single thought in my head right back into the woods. I didn't stop, I didn't look back, I didn't try to be quiet through the forest. I just ran as fast as I could. That's correct. I was so scared I ran back in the dark, scary woods to get away, only realizing how dumb that was sometime afterward. The sound it made chilled me to my core then, but now in hindsight I think the flashing eyes bothered me more than the sound because it seemed so expected. The flashing, glowing eyes trope is precisely what I have heard in so many other people's encounters. I never believed about mysterious creatures they claim to have encountered. Because that is what scary things in the night do, right? They flash yellow eyes or make scary shrieking sounds at you. Obviously, what else would they do? I never made it to my friend's house that night, and I never mentioned it to anyone else. I managed to forget about this experience pretty quickly, although I am not sure how my life was high drama at the time. So I am sure it was because I did something stupid, and that took over my world. The second sighting happened in Central Florida, 2006, spring, early night around 8 p.m. The second sighting is much briefer, and as I mentioned before, I am 90% sure it was the same thing, but not entirely sure. I'll keep this short and tell you simply that I was out camping, went for a walk along a trail, and watched my girlfriend hop from rock to rock across the river. I heard a sound to my left, and when I turned to look, I saw an extremely thin, skinny, black, nubbed leg, possibly a tail, disappear behind a tree as if the animal was running away from something. I ran over this time, but I found nothing and didn't mention it to my girlfriend. No experiences or weird sounds that night, and no more encounters for several years. This recent sighting happened on the eastern shore of Virginia, June 8th, 2019 at about 11 p.m. I was at a party at a friend's house celebrating her birthday because she is one of those people in their 30s that still gets excited about those things. I don't drink, so I was not drunk, but in the interest of total transparency, I have been known to partake in the occasional medicinal herbal supplement for recreational purposes. You can take that information however you'd like. My friend lives with her husband in a farmhouse surrounded by open field for a couple of acres in any direction, surrounded by coarse, thick forest. I had been there for a while, and the thing was the furthest thing from my mind. We were all just hanging out, rambling on about the usual insane shit. I decided that I wanted to smoke, and so I went out the front door onto the porch. I stepped forward and went down the step to the front steps to get a little more space, and as I did, I glanced up and out into the field in front of the house. There it was, roughly 50 yards out, bumbling through the field toward the trees. For a split second, I could see the unmistakable shape of this weird shadow child thing. It was just the same before. Large head, belly, unbelievably thin arms and legs, and again, reflecting absolutely no light at all. I was mid-step when I glanced up and lost track of where I was stepping, causing me to fall forward. I managed to catch myself as I fell barely, and I must have made a sound when I did, because when I looked back up, the thing was on all fours and quickly running off like a dog into the woods. I'll reiterate, this thing did not move on all fours like a person in the way, but it moved like an animal with knees bent backward. It was too far, and it happened too fast for me to tell you if it had hands or feet this time. I started to walk out and look around a bit when someone came outside, and not wanting to tell anyone, I just went back to the party. I must have been distant the rest of the night because I couldn't get it out of my head. I ended up leaving the party relatively early, went home, and started obsessing about it, as I have been. So I am sufficiently freaked out by a lot of things about what I've seen, even discounting the second sighting. I got 2 brief but good looks at something I cannot explain. One thing that really bothers me the most about this is why me? Why, as far as I know, have I been the only one to see this thing? If it knows of me and is following me or something like that, then why does it seem to be surprised by my presence each time I've seen it, and then enter a sort of fight or flight mentality? If it doesn't know me, then why am I the only one seeing this thing, and now in 3 different states years apart? What I saw that night was so unnatural I'd never expected to see anything like it in my life. It honestly just did not belong in our physical reality, and it almost didn't even seem to fit into the environment around it, as if it's something 2-dimensional, superimposed into an authentic 3-dimensional background. I looked into shadow people, videos and sightings, but I don't think this is what that was. Nothing ghostly about what I saw. It was there and had solid form. This thing, y'all, this fucking thing, it was so out of place, but at the same time I saw it there and heard it as well. I don't know what else to say about it. Each time except the second, I could see enough of it that I could tell it was not somebody messing with me. And I could see enough of it to say it did not belong here in this world with us. My best guess at this point is that it and I crossed each other's paths in a possible interdimensional rift or time slip only because of how surreal the experience was. I know it sounds crazy, but it is all I have come up with to rationalize the fact that this thing did not fit into the surroundings in any way. It didn't even look like it was to make it move, get around this world. The force of gravity should have surely crushed its skinny legs under the weight of its body. It was like an eggplant on toothpicks. That is all that I have to share about this thing. I sincerely hope someone else has seen something like this. The reason why I wanted to share this is because we've been talking about portals, Dogman, Sasquatch, but the portals, and how I think the creatures that come out of these portals are much, much more terrifying than something that actually exists in this plane. I mean, at least a Sasquatch, we can figure out how it moves and, it makes sense of how it walks. A Dogman as well. But whatever this thing was is definitely just plain out creepy. Another thing, I was talking to Matt yesterday from Australia, and I said, dude, check out inorganic beings. And I encourage anybody to, look it up and read about these things, because I think a lot of what people see nowadays are either, minus the Dogman and Sasquatch, but either come from a portal or are an inorganic being. And honestly, when you look it up and read a little bit about it, it'll freak you out. So, anyway, let's move on to the next encounter. Today's third encounter. Everyone who hears camping goes with happiness and new experiences and new adventures. Some take cameras, others their favorite hobbies. In our group, we were posted in the camp deep in the woods situated in Bulgaria. Honestly, we have our beliefs and folklore that we have witnessed in ages ahead, but what we all saw was so damn different that even I can't explain it until now. We prepared ourselves to have a good time, some booze, and a couple of treks up the mountain nearby. We arrived rather fast at the campus grounds as I was sleeping deep and didn't recognize until Maya shook me awake and I blinked away the sleepiness. Walking out with our big backpacks, we gathered around the elders and listened to the instructions that obviously we'd break later. Getting into the separate rooms for girls and boys, we were all set up for a few days. Went like a flash, and then that day we were accompanied by two elders that led the way to their local campfire grounds. It was far away from the camp, so we were walking, talking, having a laugh. A few boys pulled a stupid scare prank, and we were close to our destination. But they say when there's someone staring at you, you feel their eyes boring into you. That was what I felt. I'm always a skeptic, but now all my senses were high as hell. Coming closer to the open space with a huge campfire, we all set up our little to-do list. Some were finding branches and twigs, others were preparing the food for the meal. Some were talking to the elders, and our group was done with all our orders. We went to the watch point. It was like a watchtower, but without the amenities. It was open and huge, that it couldn't allow many people on it. It was a breathtaking sight. Coming down, I again felt being watched, like an intense watch that makes you turn around, so I did slowly and carefully, as if not feeling its eyes on me. There was nothing behind me, or rather, I hadn't seen it. So I went towards the campfire. It was not dark. It was around 1 p.m., so nothing scary to be honest, but the feeling soon enough returned. I've always had a great hearing, and if something moves, falls, makes noise, I turn my head always towards the said-so direction. Thumps like someone or something was running on four legs. Remembering it was a forest after all, I stopped to see if it's an elk or fox or something else, but then to my horror, the thumps stopped as soon as I did. I was shocked so badly I didn't recognize my friend Maya trying to get my attention. Hey, Earth to Dana. The hell, my dude? Did you see a bird or an elk? I shook my head and my brows rose in surprise as I said, No damn idea, Maya. Maybe it's just my imagination. She laughed and dragged me towards the campfire as I kept glancing back and having a bad feeling about it. As we all sat down, I thought that maybe, just maybe, the hunger was making me hear things and yet something was off. One of the boys, Nick, decided to visit the local nature WC, to let it go. And strangely enough, he went with his plate with a good chunk of meat. We all chatted already, filled with delicious barbecued food, as we saw Nick rushing back, as if he saw a ghost. We all looked at him as he explained, pointing to the plate that has only sauce remaining on it, where his piece of meat was. I swear I'm not scaring you guys. I was taking a leak and I felt like something whooshed past me. I heard the sound of the damn plastic plate, so I turned around and saw my food was gone. He had a bewildered look on his face. Everyone, even the elders, suggested that it was a wild animal that stole it, but the look in his eyes told something else. Some of the girls shared their meat with him, but yet we were all a bit worried. After collecting all the plastic and remaining food in the trash bag that we set aside for us to take when we left, the elders suggested walking around a bit and show a few other places with waterfalls and caves. As we walk across the horse path looking for indentations in the wet mud, we saw a few rather strange ones and stopped to observe them. They were wide, as if bear or canine, but how could it be so wide and big? Shrugged it off, we walked a bit further, when the feeling hit me again. We were being watched by someone or something. As I turned my head, I spotted a rather old treehouse. As I alerted the others, the group continued ahead, not waiting for us. We all walked toward the house, and we saw a ladder. It was just pieces of wood plank nailed to the tree, heading up. We decided to climb up. As we heard a few twigs being broken and rustling as if someone was running around us, we stopped and decided to shrug off climbing inside. The smell was wet, wood, and dust. As we all climbed in, Nick, who was the last to climb, yelped and screamed, "Get inside now!" We all gathered further into the treehouse, looking at him like he was a lunatic. We had looked at him for an explanation as he was shivering and trembling. It was summer, so we had t-shirts on, as he did. I saw something huge and big down there running past me. We all panicked so hard as we looked at him. I whispered, "It's a bear, right?" He looked around frantically as one of the boys took out a knife, which made me smile, because it would be a damn toothpick towards such a huge animal. He gasped for air as we all tried not to panic and not to hit the fan. We heard something running around. It was the sound of a four-legged animal. If it's a bear, could it climb into the house? My mind screamed. We all stood still as the running now was accompanied by a growl of it as it suggested it was a bear, but it was not a bone-chilling as we heard the next sound. It was a mix of a howl of a wolf mixed with a human howling and insufferable pain. We all froze. It felt like a damn horror movie. We heard something climbing up the tree as we all stood still, covering in the back of the treehouse, looking out at the open window. We all froze. There was a huge-ass bear climbing up the tree. As it sensed us, was it hungry? My mind was going a mile per second as I realized something. The bear was not even looking in our direction, it was looking down. I took a step closer to the window, so did Nick. We both looked confused. What was wrong with this bear? I mean, I'm happy it wasn't attacking us or eating us alive, but what in the name of everything could have scared a bear? The answer came with such a loud snarl and growling sounds, accompanied by thumps and scratches. We both looked down. I wish I didn't. This thing was so huge, at least 8 feet tall. It had a huge snout and really sharp canine. It was black and its ears were pointed like a lynx. Its fur was black and its eyes were yellow. We both stood there like dumb idiots, our brains going into Windows 95 mode, trying to at least process what the hell was going on. We didn't felt when the others came closer. All we heard was terrifying whispers and gasps. We all retreated from the windows as we thought it was trained on the poor bear. We heard someone screaming our names. As I relaxed in relief, peeked out to see the wolf-like thing retrieve its body shape was the strangest of all. It was close to a human body, but more agile and more powerful. We climbed down as we heard some twigs falling and scratching, as if next to us. One of the girls screamed bloody murder, and we heard a thump and a bear running down the opposite side of the road. We all bolted down, nearly stumbling and falling off as we saw our elders rushing toward us. We were paler than a paper sheet. Walking back, we saw a rather peculiar moment. The bonfire was broken up, the trash bag was ripped open, and the food of all contents gone. The group stood there petrified. The elders checked for any animals around. When found nothing, we picked up the trash again and left. This time our group was ahead, practically running toward the camp. As the others mocked us, we tried to play it off. As we ran back, I felt it again, the dread of being watched and thinking that at the campgrounds we would be safe. We all headed towards the old bell tower. It was abandoned and the bell was ripped off, but the door was metal and heavy, so we decided to just close it in case. Gathering up, we all let out a deep breath and huff, as some decided to hit a smoke before the elders came back and caught them. But I think at this point, no fucking buddy gave a shit. "What the fuck was that thing?" said Alyssa, inhaling the smoke as if it would calm her nerves down. No idea, Al. It's something frigging bigger than a damn bear, Nick added, still looking to the outskirts of the barbed fence. Next spoke John. He was from the United States and was an exchange student coming to visit, to learn more of our country. He gulped. It's not a thing. He hardly spoke, as if something, as a memory, flashed across his face as he swallowed, looking toward the dark forest. It's a dogman. Everyone looked at him in bewilderment. My grandpa met one when he was camping. He said it was terrifying, even scarier than a horror movie. It was gray, though, but it had these yellow eyes that scared my grandfather, and he ran away, leaving his tent behind. It was chasing after him, taunting him. My grandfather knew if he stopped he would die, or worse. So he hid in a cave, and in the next morning a group of scouts helped him out of the forest. He said he'll never forget how terrified he was then. He even didn't return to retrieve his belongings. We all listened, realizing how lucky we were to be alive in one piece. But our peace was disturbed once again by this terrifying howling scream. Everyone started to look around like damn owls trying to find the source. And then I spotted it, standing on its hind legs. It was something straight from Van Helsing movie, making me gawk at the creature before me. It was sniffing the air, and its ears were moving as it took close steps towards the barbed wire fence. We stood and looked at each other. I felt dread filling my body. My hands were sweating, and the pulse of my heart was skyrocketing. If I was to face it, I would be dead where I stood, and only this realization made me whimper. Everyone was panicking once again as some of the guys slammed shut the metal door behind me. I never broke the eye contact. Slowly, I tried to come back to my senses and breathe steadily. They said so dog thing or werewolf thing tilted its head to the side as a curious puppy would and bared its teeth, making me tilt my head involuntarily to the side as its head snapped towards the voices. It bolted toward the depths of the forest. We were quiet for a moment and then said, "We're not mental, I know it. People don't get mental at once. This thing was real. That was in the woods chasing the bear." Everyone agreed silently as we all walked back quietly. Every single one of us was quiet and antsy. Every single noise made us jump nervously. We locked everything we could, even tried it for a few times, still scared of this dogman thing. Honestly, we all went back to sleep, but I couldn't sleep that night as I was on edge. Turns out that everyone who was in our group was on edge and didn't get a good sleep. Outside was a full moon, and I looked at it, remembering these ambers looking back at me. It didn't cross the fence. It didn't attack us. It could, but the most unusual, it was curious about something, and definitely it was intelligent. It didn't let me bat an eye as I walked to the window. And this time I felt again watched. The whole skin was covered with goosebumps looking at the dark forest. Now I knew it was always there watching, studying, and waiting, but for what I had no idea. You see, I am a skeptic and non-believer, but this encounter made me and my friends scared to go camping, even in a huge group. I'd rather stay inside, but what truly makes a non-believer a believer is an experience of facing it yourself. The bear was enough for me to set the uneasiness in the depths of my soul. But this experience of this dogman or werewolf, whatever you call it, still makes me wake up in cold sweats, looking frantically around and checking my door and windows that are locked. Sometimes I still have the feeling of being watched. Is it my paranoia? Or it really had followed me back? I've never gotten an answer. Now, for those of you who are going to say, learn how to read, the story was written by someone from Bulgaria, so obviously their English was not the best. You pretty much could get the gist of the story, though, and if you can't, then I don't know what to tell you. Wow. Yeah, I think that would ruin my camping adventures for the rest of my life as well. Huh. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's upload. I want to thank everybody. You guys are truly the greatest. You make this channel worth it. You make this channel the channel. You are the channel. Be kind to each other. And with that, farewell.